The congregations in the United Church of Christ feel the economic crisis in different ways. I think the crisis will deepen as more and more people become unemployed, and that's where it's going to have a direct impact on our churches. Some of our churches already are feeling it because they have significant endowment money that's invested in the stock market, and the loss of those values has been severe. But some congregations are not feeling much. Others are feeling a profound impact. I think everyone has sort of the psychological impact of fear, anxiety, and what does the future mean. Congregations have really two roles, I think. The first is to keep before all of us the needs of those who have been poor for a long time, those who are now even poorer, and those who are now reduced to poverty for the first time in their lives. And while everyone is feeling anxious, people who are in poverty are under tremendous pressure now. And so one of the roles of the church, a kind of prophetic role, is to remind people that poor people need to be at the center of our attention. That means both as we advocate for public policy, but also as we organize in our communities to care for people who are facing the real challenges. So keeping poverty at the center of our attention in the midst of all of our personal anxieties is very important. The second is to help people think about where their real security comes from. As they're anxious about their jobs, as they're anxious about their future, to remind them that their true security comes from their faith in God through Jesus Christ. And as we now are in the Easter season, to remind us that hope comes through Christ and not simply in the amount of money we have in our bank account or the security of our job. So it's a theological challenge and a spiritual challenge for the churches. I think what it does is just create a constant awareness of anxiety and discomfort. Perhaps for some congregations that have been very active in community service, in providing shelter for homeless people or in providing food for hungry people, every day they see the numbers increasing. So they're facing the immediate challenge of trying to feed more people, house more people, clothe more people at precisely the time when their own members have less money to share, or so the need goes up and the resources go down. So that has an impact on those congregations. But for most of our churches, I think it's a quieter spiritual crisis that impacts the congregation. So the pastor's sermons are focused in a somewhat different direction. The Bible studies move in the direction of the meaning of faith and security and where our comfort lies. The prayer circles revolve around that. The pastor's visitation may focus more on families where there's great uncertainty or there's unemployment. But it's not so obvious. It's a quieter kind of shift in focus and attention. A very helpful change is and can be to really rethink the centrality of greed in our culture. Greed and consumption have grown completely out of control here, and I think in other places as well. And it may help us refocus on shared values of care for one another, of focusing on the health and welfare of all citizens rather than just those at the very top. It may refocus a sense of where our real values are, where our true security lies, what our responsibilities are to one another. So this could be a wonderful outcome of a very difficult situation. But I'm not convinced that that'll happen. The other possibility is that we simply get through this crisis and return to a culture that values greed and consumption and wealth as sort of the preeminent values, and this depression, this recession becomes an unpleasant memory, but little more than that. So part of the task of the church is to seize this moment and say this is a teaching opportunity for us to really refocus where the values in our culture will lie. It also, I think, is a moment when The danger is we become very introverted. We look only at what's good for the United States and forget that we have a huge responsibility to the most impoverished parts of the world that are struggling even more now because of the world global economic crisis. So this becomes another prophetic challenge for the church, is not simply to say, what about the poor in our midst, but what about those who've lived in horrible poverty for a long time in the global south? And that's another important moment when our country can either open itself up in generosity and reassess its own policies that have created some of the poverty in the South, or it can be a time when we close ourselves in and worry simply about our own wealth and our own future. I think the justice questions need to be at the center of attention. The temptation will be to simply get through this on our own. And the faith challenge, the biblical challenge, is to say that all of us throughout the globe need to take responsibility for each other. And there needs to be global justice, not simply a wealthy America. That'll be a challenging word, because a wealthy America is what many here want. Global justice seems distant and perhaps someone else's responsibility or a secondary concern when you're feeling threatened yourself. So the church has a huge opportunity and a huge responsibility right now to lift up global justice as a value that we need to affirm and need to assert, and that the United States, in spite of the economic challenges right now, remains a country with enormous resources and enormous potential to create conditions of justice around the world. And our hope is that we can encourage policymakers and ordinary citizens who are members of our churches to be very sensitive to this reality and this possibility.